This video is for business leaders who want a clear vision framework to make all other business decisions easier for them and their employees. Have you ever wished there were ways to make all of your decisions better, fewer, and easier? This is Clone Week, and I assure you that there is a desirable reason, because our cognitive capacities are limited no matter who you are, to make fewer decisions and therefore make better decisions that will probably be easier to make. So, and in fact it's validated. So watch to the end for bonus material on decision making and innovating along a continuum, and a recommended video on creating your company's vision so it outlasts you, hopefully the century and maybe the centuries. So for me, the thing that I struggle with in terms of decisions all too often is about what's known as the tyranny of choice. That's just having too many choices. Seems like a good problem to have, but it is still a problem, choosing from too many options. And I guess in a sense, for me, it's kind of the price I pay for having an abundance of ideas. I've spent my whole life generating an abundance of ideas and the skill around that. And though it is a real struggle sometimes, there's also a solution for that. And like many other things, there's a solution for pretty much all challenging, complex problems. This is to help you be able to do that better. So in the book Willpower, Roy Baumeister and John Tierney explain how and why decision-making is just like, was it Ford? Henry Ford, I think, who said that thinking is the hardest thing we can do. That's why so few people engage in it. And now there's scientific validation to support that idea that making decisions or being the decider is the most taxing mental work you can do. And in fact, world-class chess champions burn as many calories while they're in a tournament as professional tennis players do in their tournaments as well. Believe it or not, it's amazing. So, ironically, the people with the most self-discipline and self-control consistently, and this is referencing professionals and very successful people as well as ordinary people. People who express the most self-control and self-discipline actually achieve this by making the fewest decisions. It seems like a contradiction, but it is not. Essentially what they do is they save their finite willpower, or glucose to be more specific if you want to get neuroscience-y, so they're in the very best state to make the fewest and best decisions possible. And then what they do, the way they achieve this is by making long-term, big picture strategic decisions that serve them over that long term, and then build habits around them. So instead of making a decision as to whether they want to have a policy over conserving energy or being sustainable or not caring about that kind of stuff, they make a decision and they stick with it, and then they form habits around doing that thing. So it goes for fitness too, right? Instead of going, well, should I work out? Shouldn't I work out? Make a decision that you are going to work out, and then you can spend far less of your decision-making and mental capacity simply maintaining that habit over the long term. Maintaining a habit, which is in essence a decision, is far less taxing mentally than making a new decision every day, or making a new decision over and over again rather than once, and then putting less willpower, less glucose into maintaining a habit, which gives you a higher and higher ROI because it takes less and less willpower the more you do it, though it never, I assure you, becomes none. So essentially by answering the following three questions, or choosing the priority between three different dimensions, let's call them, once, then revisiting them maybe yearly or maybe even less, this will really help you and your team stay on vision and make fewer, better decisions for years to come. So choosing which of these three matter most to you and your organization will radically reduce your decision quantity or the difficulty of those decisions while raising your decision quality. So which will you prioritize? That's not a decision I can make for you. I will go through mine, but mainly it's to look at the aspects here. So the first one is meaning versus money. For me, this is a no-brainer. Meaning over money. And when I'm talking here, I'm talking about personal and professional, not only development, that what you do for your job feels to the employees, to all of your team, like it actually matters. The return on investment, the value of that has been clearly demonstrated in Daniel Pink's book, Drive. And anybody you've actually seen working in some of the most exceptional and successful companies in the world, where meaning is part of the priority. Now, this doesn't mean you're ignoring money issues. And ironically enough, it oftentimes turns into more money. If you question this, why then does Zappos and Amazon once a year offer people the equivalent to 1 or 2 months' wages to quit? Because if they hate their job, if their job has no meaning to them, they've calculated a number of which is less than keeping them on and the money they will lose because they're disengaged with their jobs. And everybody's heard the thing about Gallup's assessment of workplace engagement, where 70% of employees or 60-some% of employees are either disengaged, occasionally disengaged, or actively disengaged at work. This means most people don't have meaning at work. If they do at your company, you will probably make more profit, not less, by making meaning over money the priority in the short term and the way you structure your business. The next one is autonomy over autocracy. Now, this is not only in terms of the organizational and managerial structure, but right down to the individual, which would loop back into the meaning and increase that meaning. So it's autonomy versus autocracy. So if you want to run your company in the command and control approach, you can, but the research is not in your favor. Autonomy over autocracy, again, is also demonstrated in Daniel Pink's book, where he talks about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, which is pretty close to what we got here, except we're talking meaning instead of mastery. Autonomy means you have more brains making decisions at the most appropriate level. And that's, of course, less decisions you have to make. And you are honestly probably less qualified to make them than the person who is right in front of that problem. Not always, but even so, if you have more brains, there is truly something called the genius of the crowd. It's a real phenomenon. Okay, so it's up to you to decide whether you want top-down control approach or letting everybody make most of their own decisions within a range, but make that range, the broader you make that range, the less you will have to deal with if your culture is done right. Now, the last one is purpose versus profits. And for me, it's the same thing as the other ones, purpose over profits. Ironically, and this is at the organizational level, not at the individual level, that meaning that we talked about at first. Screw profits over purpose. And when I say this, I don't say this because I am some kind of evil socialist or something. I say this because the data is pretty clear on this as well. And that is, if you make the mission of your company, I'm sure you've heard of Whole Foods, there are companies that do have purpose over profits that are extremely successful. Another one I would cite in this specific area would be Tesla and Elon Musk's companies. How's he doing for profit? Pretty damn well. And one of his employees on a video I watched online was talking about Elon's filter, which fits really well with this episode, is that he looks at every problem and every decision through the lens of, will this get us to Mars faster? So safe to say, that's a whole lot more about purpose than profit. And yet, hey, he's not having any problems in the profit department at all. That is a side effect or a greater, longer term effect of making purpose something significant in your company, because that will loop back to meaning, but it's also the larger organizational purpose and vision. If that's there, people care about what they do. And let's face it, in most companies, that is absolutely not the case. So, welcome to the bonus content. Thank you for watching this far. Now, this is about decision-making and innovation along a continuum. And this is inspired by and related to the entire video, but in particular by the wonderful, excellent book I keep mentioning in my videos, Scaling Up Excellence by Robert Sutton and 𝗪𝗲 Rao. And essentially in that book, they talk about, I'm taking their idea and translating it to different places where I think it could be used very effectively. Essentially in the book, they talk about running a business or a business model on what they call Buddhism versus Catholicism. And really this was what this comes down to, is an adaptive approach. That is, when your business goes international, or as it goes more geographically broad, the business has flexibility and sort of local autonomy to adapt their business to the local conditions, to the local culture, versus a much more standardized model, which is analogous to Catholicism. And this is true. If you've been in different countries and seen Catholic churches, they're pretty much the same everywhere, and much of the same things about the way the Catholic Church runs as an organization is very standardized and far less flexible, more of a autocracy than anything. And Buddhism, on the other hand, when you go to Buddhist temples in different countries, well, there's a shared architectural commonality, usually coming from China, but the Buddhists in different countries look different for a reason. Buddhism is both famous for and successful because they have adapted to merge with the local culture. So here in Japan, it's like a Shinto Buddhism rather than whatever it is in other countries. Confucian Buddhism probably in Korea, and probably a Taoist Buddhism in China, though I can't say for sure. So the idea here is that you can do this with all of these things we've been talking about today. So meaning versus money, that can be thought of as a continuum. Rather than being one extreme or the other, just like they talk about in this book, you can be both simultaneously have between extreme adaptability with complete local autonomy for that one branch of your business, to extreme standardization with no flexibility the world over. And that you can be anywhere along this continuum and slide it to make your business successful. And I'll give you some really good examples of that. McDonald's, super standardized, so very Catholic or standardized in much of the way it runs its things. But I'm pretty sure that you can't get zucchini flavored pie or full moon festival pie probably in any other country. So McDonald's is an example that is on that continuum. They have standardized procedures, but their menus across the world have local Buddhist or adaptive adjustments for that. So you can do that with your meaning versus money. So you can slide along that scale. Could you say 50-50? Sure. I'm still in favor of the meaning over money sliding to the meaning side. But all of these things, meaning versus money, autonomy versus autocracy, and profits versus purpose, all of these can be run anywhere on a sliding scale. And companies have been successful on all of them, though, as I said, I've already not only shown my position, but I've shown my position because it's based on data. And yet so few companies actually look at the scientific data. This isn't scientific data from theoretical stuff. This is scientific data from looking at companies who have applied this. So you have to choose which is best for you. Just know that the data supports autonomy, purpose, and meaning over their antithesis. And that's it for the whole episode, other than the recommended video, which is how to set your vision. And that is it's actually part 1 of a book review of Jim Collins' excellent book, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, that I mentioned. It is also associated with some of the stuff I talked about today about innovating along the continuum, where he talks about technology push versus market pull products. And it isn't all market pull, because he gives real world examples of both, and both having been very successful. Everybody right now think it's all market pull. And bottom line is that's just not what the facts tell us. So hopefully you can get some valuable stuff out of that in terms of how to set your company's vision if you don't already have one. And I've added 2 bonus videos, which is 1, self-control is the key to success. Now that is a long video of an hour long, and that is specifically the authors that I referred to earlier from Willpower, which is John Tierney and Roy Baumeister, and them talking about how willpower, and what I've already talked about to some degree, by the authors of that book, and how that is the key or a fundamental aspect to success. Probably worth watching. I'll be honest, I haven't watched it, but I've read the book, so I have every confidence to recommend it. And Innovating Along a Continuum, which is my own video going deeper into what I talked about today, but in particular around innovation and the technology push versus market pull. So please share this video with any business leader or anyone else who sometimes finds that they're overwhelmed by decision fatigue. This has been Crush It Club 267, Decision Making, Proactive versus Reactive. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.